Some more volume, sir.
Okay. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Probably in the next 2 to 3 hours, I'll be discussing about a very important issue that is about the life-saving measures during emergency. As you have learned probably about the disaster and the disaster management, basics about the disaster. So the very important or the main objective of the disaster management is to save the lives during emergency. And when it comes to save the lives, definitely we need to have the set of skills regarding saving lives during emergency or any disaster. We need to have knowledge regarding we should categorize the casualties. We call the procedure as a triage. And we also need to have the knowledge about how to shift the casualties safely to the hospital and as quickly as possible. So we are going to discuss this in detail, step by step. And we have a presentation also related to this, and I'll be showing the presentation and a few videos are there, provided if I can show you these videos online, that will be useful. And to start with, I'm sure every one of you are very much aware about the disaster and the disaster management. So present day, we are facing a peculiar kind of a scenario now because of the climate change. So because of the climate change, we are not seeing the seasonal rainfall pattern. What we are seeing now is a more number of cyclones, more number of deep depressions, or erratic rainfall pattern, or sometimes it may be raining very heavily, sometimes it may not be raining at all. Due to this climate change phenomena, the number of the disasters that currently the India, the nation is facing is increasing drastically. And as well as we also face a situation of a drought. So we are mainly focusing on not only on natural disaster, we are focusing also on the man-made disasters. We'll be discussing in detail about the man-made disasters. So as you are aware about the classification of the disaster into three categories, that is primarily natural, as you know, like floods, tsunami, earthquake, or the cyclone, all this comes under the natural disaster. And the second category is called human-induced or man-made disaster, probably the road accident, industrial accidents, nuclear accidents, even the war also can be called as a man-made disaster. So the 21st century, we are seeing more number of hybrid kind of disaster, where there is a combination of both the phenomena, that is about combination of the natural factor and human manipulation or human involvement aggravating that disaster. The best example I can quote is from the COVID. As you are aware about the situation during the COVID, which has killed more than 6 lakh people in India. So COVID is a disease. The origin of the disease nobody knows exactly, but the aggravation is due to the human involvement. So it is spreading due to the human involvement. So we are familiar with the COVID-like or COVID situation. At the same time, there are types of hybrid disaster that we can categorize. Climate change is a hybrid disaster where, as you know, the global warming is a natural phenomenon. The global warming has been aggravated due to the more emission of the greenhouse gases. So that is causing the climate change. So the climate change results into various things. The main important, it is going to affect the climate, and it's going to affect everyone for that matter. So our life-saving measures, when it comes to the life-saving measures during an emergency or first aid or first response during emergency, we need to look into what type of disaster that currently the India is facing and how we have to cope up with that. So I'll be opening a presentation regarding that, and we'll go step by step according to the presentation as well. And regarding the life-saving skills, why the knowledge of life-saving skills is required? It is not there in our curriculum. The topic of disaster management itself, it's not there in our curriculum. A person who is graduated or postgraduated or done a Phil or a PhD may not be aware about the simple things like if somebody is drowning, how to help. If somebody is having a serious injury after a road accident, how to manage, how to give the first response, how to shift the casualty, what are the measures to be taken. And we assume that this knowledge is a medical knowledge, which is not. It is not a medical knowledge. It is a general knowledge or a general awareness which everyone should be having. So basically, life-saving skills should be the part of the curriculum. It should be included along with the disaster and the disaster management also. Primarily, when you look into the number of death or the people being killed during the disaster, so currently we are facing a peculiar situation in 21st century, probably 2023. We are proud about many of our achievements. Means to say that India is proud about the scientific achievement in the field of space technology. Like we reached to the moon, and there are measures to get more information from the sun. So all these are achievements in the one aspect, but when it comes to the life-saving aspect, we are failing. We means to say for the wrong reason we are making number one in the world headlines. So the India stands number one when it comes to the death related to the disasters or the road accidents. So more than 1,60,000 people die every year in our country due to accident or accident related injuries, or due to the natural or calamities or the disasters, I can say. So the number of death, it's crossing every year more than 2 lakh people. A number of injured, road accident cannot be categorized as a disaster, but at the same time, it's a number one killer. We need to address it, and definitely we need to take serious measure to look into what can be done to reduce the loss of life. And very important aspect related to the number one reason I said for the death, that is road accident. The information says that the statistics given by WHO and UN related agencies says that the very reason of the number of death in India, it is not due to directly due to the road accident. It is due to there is no first response in the initial 1 hour. The people who are the curious onlookers or the first responder or whoever is there at the time of the accident may not be aware about how to help a casualty, how to shift the casualty, how to stop the bleeding, how to give artificial breathing, or how to do the CPR. For that reason, the number of death is increasing in India on number of road accidents. If you look into the newspaper, everyday newspaper, there is a column in the everyday newspaper which I'm sure nobody will be reading that which mentions more than 10 or 15 death take place every day in the Karnataka state alone. More than 25 death is reported due to the road accident. So the number one killer is the accidents is becoming a number one killer. When it comes to accident, it is not natural, it's man-made. Maybe a road accident, maybe industrial accident, maybe technical related issues that can cause an accident. So that is the number one reason. And the number two reason why we need to have a knowledge on first response is this may not be related to disaster and the disaster management directly, but for the reason why I'm telling is we need to have a knowledge about all these issues, which is making, which is important reason for the number of death. That is second one is the number of heart attack cases is increasing in India, and the number of people who are dying due to the cardiac arrest and the heart attack, we stand first place among the 198 countries in India. And this information, if you study it thoroughly, it says that the people generally lack the knowledge and the skill how to respond after if someone is having a heart attack, if someone is having a cardiac arrest. So the people doesn't know how to perform a basic life support. We doesn't know. We are not been taught. Means to say it is not part of our curriculum. We don't know about the skill. So what is more important here is to understand that we have to sensitize everyone about the basic life support and the CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which may be useful during a disaster also, as well as during uh, normalcy when there is no disaster also. So that is CPR, which we are going to learn in the today's session. That is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, how exactly to perform CPR and when to perform CPR, and what is the skill involved in CPR. And I'm sure that this is an online training, but I advise you that every one of you should get thoroughly physically trained, hands-on training, I can call it as, on the CPR, the cardiopulmonary resuscitation, because cardiopulmonary resuscitation can save lives during any emergency. And this is a very important skill that everyone should have. So the second reason why the India is making international headlines for the wrong reason is the number of death which is taking place during cardiac arrest. We don't know the first response. It is not that the people are dying directly due to cardiac arrest. We don't know the first aid. We try to help them by giving water, we try to do whatever we know or whatever we have seen in the WhatsApp or in the social media, which is wrong, which may not be right and which may not be true. So the third reason why the knowledge of life-saving skills is very much required in the disaster management is the population of the country. As you know, we stand number one in the world. So when we have so much of population, the emergency response at the hospital level, everyone may not have an access to the emergency response. For example, if there is a building collapse, we cannot shift 100 casualties immediately to the hospital, and all the 100 casualties may not get the immediate attention for the very reason that we are prepared for day-to-day related issues, but we are not prepared for it. Since we are upgrading, the COVID was the best lesson that was learned, where there was acute shortage of the bed, acute shortage of the emergency equipment, acute shortage of the oxygen cylinders. That has made us to understand the issue, but I don't know whether we learned lessons from the COVID, because disaster is a disaster where the number of death will be more than 100. If you remember the train tragedy that happened in Orissa, which killed more than 500 people, and that it's injured more than 1,000 people there. And when we have a huge number of casualties or injured, so we cannot expect 100 ambulance to arrive to the scene. We can expect only 4 or 5. And in 4 or 5 ambulance, we cannot shift all the 100 injured or 1,000 injured people. It is very difficult. So the first response in disaster, and if we need to categorize it, we need to categorize who needs assistance first. Life-threatening injuries needs assistance first. They will be shifted to the hospital. What about the remaining injured people? The first responders, like the line departments, we call it as first responder departments like police, home guard, our fire brigade, or the disaster management related. We have a national disaster response force. We have state level disaster response force. So these forces have got many a number of trained people who can able to provide a first aid, who can able to provide a help till the person gets a medical assistance. So the number of population is very high. We have a huge population. The train tragedy itself that happened in Orissa will make us to understand, even in any disaster. Thank God that we didn't had any major disaster in India after the tsunami 2004, or after the earthquake that happened in Gujarat, Bhuj, that is in 2001, killing thousands of people. But after that, we have disasters. So we call it as a small scale disaster. That's due to the climate change we are seeing. We are seeing the increased number of the cyclones, but the number of death has not crossed even 10 also, because of the efforts taken by the various departments, Indian Meteorological Department, or the measures taken by the NDRF, National Disaster Response Force, and the NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, for evacuating the people. See, nowadays the technology is so good that we get alert through the various measures that cyclone, if it is approaching even 1 week in advance, we get the information. Based on the information, precisely we can pinpoint where exactly it is going to have a landfall. So if wherever there is a landfall, if we evacuate the people, definitely the loss of life will be prevented and reduced also. And but only property damage will be there that nobody can control, and it's difficult to contain. So the Chennai floods, if you remember, the urban flooding is a common phenomenon that we are seeing every day. The urban flooding, and during the urban flooding, that's a common thing that's happening in the urban flooding is the people are suffering. I do agree that cyclone can cause a devastating effect, but loss of life can be minimized by the measures that can be taken. So in the next part which we are going to discuss is about the skill. Allow me to open the presentation related to this. Uh, okay, so basically, when we start about the disaster profile, I'm sure that every one of our sensitized about the various disasters that the country is facing and the disaster profile of the nation. Um, I'm sure that everyone have got an awareness regarding that, about the the disaster profile, how much we are prone to earthquake, how much we are prone to floods, how much we are prone to the probably the other related incidents. So allow me to just open the presentation. Just take 1 minute time. So when it comes to the earthquake-related incidents, more than 60% of the landmass in our country is prone to the earthquake. I'm sure everyone are very familiar that we have a zoning system. As we know, the whole of the Karnataka comes under the Zone 2 and Zone 3. So the chances of earthquake happening in this place is the mild to moderate. It's not that a very severe earthquake can happen in Karnataka, but basically we need to have a knowledge not only about the Karnataka, generally about the earthquake-related issues. So when you think about the earthquake, the primarily the injuries that is related to the earthquake that can happen related to most of the related to the probably head and neck related injuries, spinal injuries, and injuries related to the bone. So let me share my screen. Can you able to see the screen?
No, sir.
Not yet, sir.
Not at all.
No, sir. No, no.
Once
Not yet seen, sir. You are not yet shared.
sorry, it's taking 1 minute. So share my screen option is not showing here. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Hope you can able to see my screen now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
There was an issue with my laptop. I don't know what happened suddenly. So I'm actually logging in through my mobile. Hope the presentation can be visible clearly. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so basically in this part of the session, we are focusing on the first response during any emergency. Maybe it is a natural or a man-made disasters. So when it comes to the emergency response, I was mentioning about the earthquake. More than 60% of landmass is prone to the earthquake in India. And generally, there is a tendency, there is a wrong belief among the people that whenever there is an earthquake, they try to run out of the building, which is not correct, which is not right. So if they are in a high-rise building or in a multi-story building, they need to be inside the building. They have to drop down, cover the head, take a shelter of either a chair or, for example, if it is inside the house, cot or a table or something rigid, or they can be standing below a pillar or a beam also. So that can protect them. But instead of running out, so running out can cause stampede, or they may fall also, they may lose the control, they may end up with injury. So particularly northern part of India is highly prone for earthquake, that is zone 4 and zone 5. You might have heard about the news related to the earthquake. The tremors are increasing across the country. And God knows what may happen. If you remember the tsunami 2004, it happened in December 24th, December 25th. So if you remember that incident, the December is considered to be the one of the worst season where generally nation will face. The reason is the most of the disaster that is was seen in the past was reported in the month of December only. So we are seeing tremors now, and we pray God that nothing serious, nothing should happen, but we should be prepared for that, and we should know the basics about the first response. So when it comes to first response, basically we need to have an give me one moment. Sorry, something gone wrong here. Okay, so the first aid. When it comes to the first aid, what is more important to remember? The objective first aid is to preserve the life, is to preserve life. Saving life is a duty of a medical professional. What is the meaning of the word preserving life? Preserving life means to say the injured before he reaches to the hospital, he or she reaches to the hospital, the oxygen supply to the brain, the blood supply to the brain should be preserved, the ABC, the airway, breathing, and circulation should be preserved. That's the aim of the first aid. So whenever we remember the first aid, it's not about putting the bandages. It is much more about the ABC. So preserving airway, preserving the breathing, preserving the circulation in the body, which is very essential during any emergency. And please remember, the first 10 minutes, you may have heard about golden 1 hour concept. The golden 1 hour concept applies to the injury, means to say within 1 hour we need to shift the casualty to safely to the hospital. That is for injury management. But when it comes to a person who is unconscious and not breathing after a building collapse, after a situation for drowning, after a floods, or after an earthquake, if you come across a person who is not breathing and unconscious, immediately we have to do the procedure called CPR, the cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and it's called basic life support. So it is not about the 1 hour. We don't get 1 hour time there. We get only 10 minutes. That's called platinum 10 minute. So platinum 10 minute is about what the first responder will do during such emergency. So because when the breathing stops, when the when there is a lack of blood circulation to the brain, lack of oxygen circulation to the brain, so within 7 minutes the brain will be irreversibly damaged. So whatever the procedure after shifting to the hospital will be done will be waste only. So if the brain is dead, no instrument, no equipment, no medicine, or no expert can bring him back. It's not possible. So the platinum 10 minute is about providing a first aid or a first response during a such emergency to save a life. And it is very essential to understand that all the first responder, particularly the line departments, we call it as various departments are there, or at the college level, we have volunteers like NCC, NSS, or for example, we have a volunteer, train volunteer or the group of volunteers. We can train them on the first response, we can depute them, we can assign with the district administration, and the district administration will be very happy to train them as well as take their assistance during such emergency. So first aid means to say it's a help which is provided during an emergency, any disaster, before the medical help arrives to the scene. Okay. And what are the emergency situation generally we come across is maybe a fire, maybe a flood, or a road accident, or a building collapse, or medical related emergency situations. So when we need to manage that, we need to have a basic knowledge about the safety. So safety is the first part. The first responder should be knowing about the basics of the safety, taking care of himself, and whenever he is in the field or she is in the field, they should be wearing personal protective equipment. For example, if I am working in an earthquake prone area, I should be wearing a gumboot, abrasion resistant jacket, and a helmet. Without the and gloves also. Without that, if you enter to the scene, definitely we may end up with injuries. So, what is more important in any such situation? So it's in any emergency, the first 1 hour is will decide how many people are going to survive in that incident and how many people are going to die. And if you look into the picture here, hope this picture is visible to you. This is one of the train accident that's reported in North India. Not this year. This is not from Odisha incident. This is from earlier than that, where there was a flyover collapse on the
flyover collapse, killing many people. So, what will be the priorities in managing the mass casualty in any such situation? What will be the first priority? The first priority is about the management of the crowd. The first priority is about managing crowd. And when it is comes to the crowd management, there will be thousands, hundreds of curious onlookers who need to be moved away. Any first response, any emergency vehicle movement, it is very important that the road should be kept clear from the crowd or the vehicles reaching to the site and taking the casualties from the site. So the first priority is about triage, which we are going to learn what exactly is a triage and how to do the triage tomorrow. So triage means categorizing the injured, classifying the injured who needs assistance first, which we are going to decide, which we are going to discuss tomorrow. So before that, the first priority in managing any mass casualty will be that the crowd management. So next will be probably providing first aid. Okay. So any mass casualties for that matter, the first aim is to preserve the life. We call it as 3P. The second aim is to prevent the situation from worsening. For example, if someone is injured and bleeding profusely, if we don't take any measures, that will aggravate the situation, that will make the situation more worse. So that is preventing situation worsening, that second P. And the third P is about promotion of the recovery, means which is going to help the person to recover. For example, after a building collapse, if someone has sustained a fracture, if you stabilize the fractured hand with a splint or a wooden splint or a scale or anything which is rigid, so that can reduce the pain, that can reduce the swelling, that can reduce the um, involuntary movement of the fractured ends of the bone, that will promote the healing also. The three P's, please remember the three P's when it comes to the first response in disaster management. That is, first P is preserving life, which is takes utmost priority. The second P stands for on the prevention of aggravation. For example, if someone is unconscious, if we don't help immediately, the person may go for further aggravation resulting into death also. If someone is having a severe injury resulting into bleeding, the bleeding is not stopped, definitely the blood loss can cause him to a shock, and shock further if it is not treated, so definitely lead into aggravation resulting into death also. So in any disaster, we are discussing about the first response. In the first response, the priority should be given to the first aid. Before
ಎರಡನೇ
uh, ಸರ್ ಸರ್ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮೈಕ್ ಆನ್ ಇದೆ
ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಆಗಿದೆ
ಸರ್ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮೈಕ್ ಆನ್ ಇದೆ ಸರ್ ಮೈಕ್ ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಸರ್
ಅವಧಿలో
ಓಕೆ ನನ್ನ ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಆಡಿಬಲ್ ಇದೆಯಾ?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what should be the priorities in case of first aid or in case of first response? We are generally using the term first aid because it is very catchy and everyone can be able to understand. But when it comes to disaster, we call it as first response. It's not really about treatment. It's about the first response, which includes non-medical procedures also, like shifting the casualty or probably loading him to stretcher, loading him to vehicle. All these procedures are involved in the first response. So the first thing what we do is we examine. We are not doctors to examine, but basically superficially we need to have a knowledge to examine A, B and C. We call it as a ABC. ABC means to say airway, breathing and circulation, and the priority should be given to the ABC. In any mass casualty means to say where more number of people, more than 50 people are injured, whether it's a bus accident, train accident, building collapse or an earthquake, more than 50 people are injured. So in that, the first important should be given to a person who is not moving, a person who is not responding. So generally what happens is, if there are untrained first responders are there, they will be approaching the casualty who will be shouting and crying for help. A person with the pain will shout and cry for help because he is feeling the pain, but there will not be any life threatening injuries to him. That's why he is crying and shouting. If there are life threatening injuries to him, he will be unable to breathe. Shouting is not at all possible. He will be semi-conscious or unconscious. So always remember, in any mass casualty, when we look from right to left side, when you look into the group as a whole, approach the person who is not responding, approach the person who is not moving. Don't assume them as dead. So that generally the common man tendency is, if someone is not moving and unconscious, they think that he is dead and they declare his spot death only. So that is wrong. So person may be unconscious, breathing may be there. Evaluate whether he is breathing, and priority should be given to them. They are the one who are going to survive. So for the people who are injured, so generally we classify the injuries into three categories. First is life-threatening injuries. The second one is severe injuries. The third one is mild to moderate injury. The life-threatening injury means to say internal injuries to the body. For example, head injury, abdominal injury, chest injuries. In such injuries, what will happen? There will be a bleeding inside the body which cannot be seen from the outside, but person will be semi-conscious or unconscious. He will not be responding to whatever you are asking. He will not be shouting and crying for the reason that he doesn't have a strength to cry also. So his system is not working. His respiratory system is not working. Cardiovascular system is not working properly. That's why he is unable to cry, shout for help. But those who are crying and shouting for help, they also need help, but not in first priority. Please remember, in case of a small accident, we will be approaching and helping everyone. But in case of a disaster, it is we have to approach the person who is unconscious first, because the number of deaths need to be reduced. So this procedure is called triage. Okay. So basically we are focusing on ABC of life support, that is about airway, breathing and circulation. We check that. So how to check for airway, breathing and circulation, we are going to discuss that later. And the fourth priority is controlling bleeding. The fifth one is for multiple injuries, unconscious. The sixth one is for multiple injuries, fracture, and shifting takes the last priority. And please note that there is no priority for giving water. Generally, we tend to give water for any injured person during a disaster. For example, if it's a building collapse or an earthquake or a flood or whatever it is, first approach, first response will be, we try to give the water. Please don't give the water. If they are conscious, you can give food and water. If they are unconscious or semi-conscious or severely injured, or if you see a noisy breathing means which is not normal breathing, please don't give the water. If you are giving water, you are aggravating the situation. You are trying to kill him. Simple as that. So water can kill a person when he is having internal injury. If someone takes the water, that may enter inside the lungs, that may cause choking and death also. So water should not come as a priority in any case of first response. We are discussing about first response, but generally in about the disaster management, during the course you will learn about what all the basic requirements of a human being affected with the disaster. So basic requirement of a human being affected with a disaster will be food, water, shelter, healthcare, first aid, clothing, sanitation, all these things will come. I fully agree with that. But initial 1 hour, when we are managing injured person, the first priority should not be the water. You please don't give water for a person who is severely injured, semi-conscious, unconscious, difficulty in breathing, noisy breathing, who is not responding to your voice command. If you give water, you are aggravating. Please note that point. But disaster management means it is not only about the rescue. Please remember, it's about the relief and rehabilitation also. Rescue is only for first 24 hours. So when we rescue, first we try to save their life. We try to protect them. We try to preserve their life. So there, all these things takes importance. So in this, remember the ABC. ABC means to say airway, breathing, and circulation. So in these three important part are there, that is ABC. We have actually redefined that into Dr. ABC. Easy to remember the terminology Dr. ABC. In case of any emergency, when it comes to the life-saving measures, you remember the Dr. ABC. The order of Dr. ABC means to say the chronological order of Dr. ABC. D stands for danger. Look for danger. What may be the danger? If it is a partially collapsed building, the building may about to collapse anytime. If you are entering inside, you are also under risk. Look for danger. For example, if it's a road accident case, if you are providing help on the spot, there may be approaching vehicle which may be unable to see you. So you need to create a barricade. Then only you can start helping. If it is a case of fire, if you are trying to help someone who is affected with a smoke, who is unconscious, remember you are also under danger because smoke is there. You also may end up with breathing issues. So clear the danger first. Make yourself safe. If you have PPE, use PPE. PPE means to say personal protective equipment. Then check the response of the person. So whether the person is responding or not, check whether he is responding to your voice command. He may respond to your voice command, or he may respond to physical movements of the body. He may wake up, or sometimes we put water, sprinkle water on the face also. That is also one of the correct method that can be practiced. There is no harm in sprinkling water on the face. That will elicit the sensory nerves on the face. So check the response. After you check the response, open the airway. So once you open the airway, check for the breathing. So when you check for breathing, how do you check for breathing? It's not by putting your fingers near the nose. That is a wrong method. So checking breathing is look for the abdominal movement and chest movement. Look for the movements of the chest and the abdomen. If someone is breathing, there will be a movement of chest and abdomen. So look, listen, feel method we use. So look for the chest movement, listen for the breath sound, and feel the hot breath air not through the fingers but through the cheek. Your cheek. You need to go close to the casualty to find out that. And the C means to say circulation. Circulation means a pulsation. So this is a skill. Probably in our training, we train our volunteers, professionals regarding how to look for ABC. This is a skill. I am sure that every one of you are aware about it. The pulse can be felt across the body. The radial pulse is below the thumb, and the most common pulse that can be seen is the carotid pulse, which is near the neck. So feel the carotid pulsation and feel it for 10 seconds. If the person is not responding for carotid pulsation, immediately we have to provide CPR. CPR means to say compressing the chest wall so that the heart pumps the blood from the heart to the vital organs of the body, including brain. So remember the order of Dr. ABC, the chronological order of Dr. ABC. That is, Dr. ABC means to say danger, check for response, and if the person is not responsive, call for help. So call for help means you can call, if you are alone, you can call for emergency numbers. And please remember the national emergency number now is 112. Okay, probably another 2 years 108 may not be there. It will be the national emergency for police, fire, ambulance, disaster management, or any other related issues will be 112. Now that will be the national emergency number. You can call for help, and if you are alone, or if there are bystanders, or if there are rescue workers around, if there are doctors or medical professionals around, you can call their attention to help the person who is severely injured at that side. Okay, so these three things are should be taken care about the disaster when we are handling first response. A person who is finding difficulty in breathing and heartbeat is hardly felt. Okay, if the radial pulsation is not felt, radial pulse means to say near the hand, near the wrist. Okay, if the severe bleeding, that is again a sign of a medical emergency. And the third one, state of unconsciousness, if the person is not responding. So these are the three categories which we have to help, we have to provide help. And don't consider these three categories as spot death. Most of our people, the reason why we stand number one in the world for the disaster death or accidental death is most of our first responders are unaware if someone is unconscious, if you provide help, he may be alive. So they don't shift him also. If you remember the Odisha train tragedy, I don't know how many of you are familiar or have followed the series of events that followed with the Odisha train accident. There was no initial first aid, and there was no triage followed. There was no mass casualty approach was followed. Still we could able to manage within 2 days. We can able to restore the railway lines. We could able to restart the train and other thing. But how the dead bodies was handled was very wrong. But technically, I am saying. But when you say the humanitarian approach, definitely everyone came forward to help. Everyone helped. That is fine. But methodologically, technically, if you're speaking, we could have done much more than what we have done. There are countries in the world which are very well prepared for emergency response for disasters. But here in India, we have to depend on departments only. We have to depend on professionals only for such help. But a general public also can be trained. A volunteer at your college, a student at your college, maybe NCC, NSS, or Youth Red Cross volunteer can be trained on this, and they can be of a great help during such emergencies. Okay. Recently, I was at Delhi for a meeting, and at that meeting, the railway DG was there, the Director General of Railways was there, and he was mentioning. Since I'm using mobile, probably the calls are getting connected immediately. I'm sorry. Okay, so the DC of the railways was telling that our Red Cross volunteers there at Odisha were the first to came forward, and they are the one who helped in making alternate stretchers when there was lack of stretchers. We didn't have a stretcher to shift 1,000 people. Who will be keeping 1,000 stretcher? Nobody will keep. It is not possible. We have only 10 to 15 ambulances. We don't have even more than 10 to 15 ambulances also at that scene. So how to categorize whom need? So it's a big thing that's called disaster management. And when we discuss about the triage, we are going to discuss that. So please remember, these are the three conditions: lack of breathing, difficulty in breathing, noisy breathing. If someone is having noisy breathing, please don't give water. If you are giving water, it is going to enter inside lungs and it's going to block it. Severe bleeding and state of unconsciousness. Okay. We are assuming that the person who is injured, we are discussing about the injury management first, then we'll go to the CPR and the basic life support. So generally there are two types of bleeding for the general understanding, that is the external and the internal bleeding we call it as. There are various types of injury, and generally when it comes to the skill of management of bleeding, you please need to understand that bleeding can be stopped by three simple steps. The first step is look for the injury carefully, and before doing that, before helping, you should be well protected in the disaster if you are responding. Like you can see in the pictures here, the first responder is wearing a gloves. The first carefully examine the wound. Is there anything stuck inside? There may be glass pieces, there may be metal pieces, there may be dust, mud, stone, which may be there in the wound. We need to clean the wound thoroughly. If available, antiseptics, if available, if the Dettol, Savlon, or anything is there, we can cleanse it. But in disasters, believe me, that is a disaster. If nothing will be available. So we can manage road accident, we can help, we can come forward because 3 and 4 people will be there. Remember the Odisha train tragedy that happened recently, that more than 1,000 people will be there. So sorry, I think the mic switch on agide. I request them to kindly switch it off. Mic na mute ಮಾಡಿ. Okay, fine. So first step in stopping bleeding is careful examination, clearing whatever the dust, mud and sand is there. Second is apply the direct pressure. Wherever there is a bleeding spot, apply the direct pressure, and we will be applying that for 8 to 10 minutes. Then elevate the portion. Elevation is important to reduce the blood loss. For example, if someone is having a leg injury, like what you are seeing in the picture now, so we need to apply the direct pressure and elevate the leg portion. So the purpose of elevation of the leg is to reduce the blood flow there. So these kind of lower extremity injuries is common in building collapse, earthquake, you can see more number. And in case of flooding, more number of cases with the drowning will be there, and management of drowning also will be taking that. And here, apply the direct pressure, elevate the limb, and make sure there is no fracture. If there are visible bone seen, you can suspect fracture. You have to give something, a rigid object, something like a scale or something like a wooden or a cardboard, to make sure that the fractured ends will not move further. Okay, so apply the direct pressure, elevate, and then put a roller bandage or whatever the bandage available. The purpose of bandaging is to reduce the blood loss. You can use any clean cloth also if you don't have an access with a bandage. So standardly, roller bandage may not be available. You can use triangular bandages. There are different type of bandages which we use for emergency response, which we train our volunteers how to make alternate available, locally available resources into the bandages. So please remember, this is one of the steps that can be. There is a video. I don't know whether this video will play. So application of the bandage is also important. Applying direct pressure, elevation, and application of bandages. If you don't have bandage, you can use a clean kerchief. You can use a cloth. You can use a towel. You can use even what I can say. Ladies will be wearing a dupatta. The dupatta also can be used as a roller bandage. It can be tightly, completely covering the wound. Can be applied on the wound directly. If you have provision of the standard equipments, it's well and good. But disaster is a situation where there is a lack of standard equipment. I'm not saying that absence. I'm saying lack of standard equipment. For the reason the number of injured is very high. It appears like a war field. So I have worked in major disasters, and based on the experiences from the past, I can say that during disaster, whatever the standard things we say, like stretcher, spine board, bandages, splints, may not be available. There will be shortage. So we have to manage what is locally available, but the purpose should be served. What is the purpose? To stop the blood loss. To stop the blood loss. So the purpose is to stop the blood loss. Okay. Then the management of other type of wound, when it comes to the management of other types of wounds, we need to have basic knowledge. And commonly the thing that is very important to remember, not only external injuries, the internal injuries also, and injuries to the spine also. So if you can see in the picture, the casualty, the injured person is protected with a cervical collar. We call it as C collar. If there is provision of C collar, we can use it, because most of the injuries during a disaster, train accident, bus accident, building collapse, when I am using a word about the mass casualty, please remember, it's about the disaster, not about the road accident. Road accident is a scene where 3 or 4 people will be injured, where you can help and assist everyone. But disaster is a different scenario where it is difficult to help and everyone, where there is a lack of resources. So when it comes to management of wound, provided you need to have a C collar, that's important thing. And there are conditions like bleeding with a fracture. If you can see the picture here, in this picture, it's very clear that the broken fractured ends are there. In such a situation, what can be done is simple thing. It is not about the medical science, it is about the simple knowledge to prevent aggravation. The primary aim of the first response is to prevent aggravation, to provide recovery or provide help to recover and to preserve life. So bleeding with the open fracture, what can be done in such a situation? First, stabilize it with a splint or a piece of wood or something, any stick or scale or whatever you have. Even a plastic bottle also will help. Like water bottles, what we use, the plastic bottles, that also can be used to stabilize. Then we can cover with a cloth or a bandage before we shift to the hospital. Okay, the primary aim in the first response is to prevent aggravation. The one more type of injury that can be seen during a disaster is a sharp penetrating object which is stuck deep inside, and it can cause bleeding and further aggravation. So how to manage this? Disaster site, I have actually a lot of pictures related to disasters, lot of pictures from our what I can say, the incidents or the disasters where I have worked, but I'm not showing here for the reason it is very disturbing to see the injured. It is very disturbing to see the blood and the management, other things. That's why we have put most of the slides are diagrammatic representation. It is not actual, so don't be afraid of seeing such kind of wounds. Okay, so the very reason why it is taken out is should not create. Some people are very sensitive to seeing blood and wound, so that should not happen. That's why. Okay, all right. So please remember, bleeding with a sharp object penetrating deep inside, please don't take it out. In the movies, you may have seen that it's being taken out. If somebody is having a sharp penetrating object stuck deep inside the body, they try to remove it. Don't remove it. Never remove it. If you remove it, you cannot control the bleeding. Even if it is a rusted piece of a metal after a building collapse, after an earthquake. So if you see such kind of incident, never try to pull it out. What can be done is we have to make a ring pad. The ring pad can be prepared using a cloth material. Okay, you can use a handkerchief to prepare a ring pad. So ring pad can be prepared. So ring pad can be applied like this. So in this diagram, actually, the this thing is not seen. Means what is not seen here is like you cannot see the foreign body which is stuck deep inside, but it should be covering only the around the wound, not covering above the wound, and we will be stabilizing that with an adhesive tape and shift the casualty to the hospital. Once they take it out, they put the sutures. So there is no harm by putting that can be done only at the hospital level. So if we try to remove any foreign body which is stuck deep inside, so we may end up with a situation which may not be able to manage locally at the site. Okay, then amputation. Amputation related injuries are quite common in a disasters. So for that we use a tourniquet. Tourniquet means to say, for example, hand related injury, we put a tourniquet above the shoulders to reduce the blood loss, and amputated part, if it is available immediately, can be properly transported and it can be rejoined also. The next one is about the management of the external bleeding through the nose, and this is a common thing that is noticed after a road accident, bus accident, train accident. Most of the injured will be having such kind of injuries. The reason why they have such kind of injury is whenever a fast moving bus or a train suddenly comes to an halt after an accident, so the person who will be inside the bus is going to hit the next seat or whatever the metallic objects there. That results into external bleeding of the nose, which is not life threatening. So in any incident, if there are 100 people, 100 number of people who are traveling in a train, for example, 100, let us assume 100, in that 100 number of injured people, 10 will be severely injured or who may be requiring a first attention immediately. Remaining 60% of injuries are mild to moderate injuries. Okay, mild to moderate. Remaining 60%, 10% is highly severe injury. 60% to 70% will be what I can say mild to moderate, like abrasion injury, bleeding, external bleeding. They will be shouting and crying for help. They will be under shock. They are fully awake. Their nervous system is working. Their central nervous system is working. The breathing, their lungs are working. Their cardiovascular system is working. Respiratory system is working. That's why they are feeling pain and shouting. But they need a help, provided they are not on the first priority, in the second priority. So 60% of injuries are minor, 10% are severe injuries I can categorize into. That adds up to the 70%. Remaining 30% of injury, 20 to 30% will be the less severe injuries. Less severe. The second category of injury, you can say, for example, like fracture, amputation. There will not be loss of life after a fracture. After amputation, nobody will die. But they also needs assistance. Second order assistance can be given. That is second. The third will be the minor injury. So how to manage the bleeding from nose? Recently I come across one situation like this. I was traveling back from Mysore after a training at ATI, and this incident happened in front of our eyes only. A bus collided with a truck, and it was in the afternoon around 3 or 4 o'clock near Hassan. So when we rushed to the inside the bus there were more than 25 people who are severely injured. Severely means to say who are having bleeding from the nose. The remaining one or two are the one who can be categorized as higher severe or the worst severe cases who are finding difficulty in breathing also. So rest of them are having all injuries related to the bleeding from nose. So how to manage bleeding from nose? That is my question. So bleeding from nose can be managed with a simple measure of application of the force, means close the nose, the soft portion of the nose like shown in the diagram. Please do not bend the head backward. There is a myth, there is a wrong understanding, there is a misunderstanding about this issue. The people tend to bend their neck backward. If you bend the neck backward, the blood is going to enter inside the body, inside the digestive system. It cannot enter inside the blood vessel. Okay, so what should be done is bending the head forward, asking the person to sit down, ask to close the nose, pinch the soft portion of the nose and breathe through the mouth. So this should be done for 10 minutes. If you do it for 10 minutes, the bleeding will stop, the clot will be formed around the nostrils of the nose and which is not harmful. If we do it other way, like you can see on your left side, that is wrong method. If you bend the head backward, the blood is not going to stop immediately. There will be continuous flow inside the body for hours together. And so it is going to enter inside the digestive system. The proper method of control of nasal bleeding is forward bending and closing the nose, breathing through the mouth for minimum 10 minutes. Please remember the 10 minutes rule in stopping the bleeding. Any sorts of injuries or bleeding, 10-minute direct pressure should be applied. So 10-minute rule is very essential and very important in such situations. It is important to remember that. Okay. So what will be the next one is about the internal injuries, which are much more danger, which can be seen in 10% of the people during a disaster. So internal bleeding is hard to diagnose because often there will not be any blood to be seen. And head injury, definitely there may be blood from the nose, there may be blood from the ears, there may be blood vomiting also in case of head injury. So how to differentiate whether it's a head injury or whether it is an injury to the directly to the face? So how to differentiate that? So it is very simple to differentiate. In case of external bleeding, bleeding will be more profuse. It will be continuous. In case of internal bleeding, due to the head injury, the blood coming out from the nose will be stopping there, like it is shown here. You can make out in this diagram. The blood which is coming there outside, it is stopping there. So that indicates that that's an internal injury, and the person may be semi-conscious also. So that can be seen here. You can make out the loss of consciousness, the wound in the scalp, and swelling or bruising also. Nasal discharge will be there. There will not be continuous bleeding from the nose. So that indicates severity of the injury, and in such a case they can be categorized as category 1 or category red, and they should be shifted to the hospital on topmost priority because the chances of survival is there. Please understand, chances of survival is up to 30% provided there is a facility at the medical or hospital level wherever near to the accident site or the disaster site, which is having a facility of operating for head related injuries or head injuries, or a neurosurgery, which is a separate department which can able to manage such injuries. So there is no first aid for this. There is no first response. The first response is identification. If you identify that as a first head injury, don't give the water. Okay. If the person is semi-conscious or unconscious, if the person is unconscious, we need to turn the casualty to the recovery position, and throughout while shifting, they should be placed in a semi-reclined position, right? Not supine. Supine matlab not means to say not flat. It should be semi-reclined, like sitting posture, slightly sitting, slightly completely sleeping. So something like you call it as supine or semi-reclined. Okay, remember that. And closed abdominal injuries are hard to diagnose, and this also can happen during a building collapse. So common injury, the bleeding, we commonly tend to mistake this as a simple abrasion injury, and we may treat it with common locally available medicines like we may apply temporary pain relieving spray, Olini spray or something like that. Please don't do that. It's not external injury. Please assess whether it's an internal or external injury. If it is external injury, the person can able to breathe and talk properly. If it is internal injury, person will be finding difficulty to breathe as well as talk. Okay, there will be cold, calm extremities, and if you touch that portion, you can feel the rigidity. Rigid, it will not be soft. The abdominal wall will be soft. But in case of internal injury, bleeding from inside the intestine, so can cause rigidity and pain also. And closed abdominal injuries are the most dangerous one. Golden 1 hour concept applies to such injuries. If you don't treat, if you don't shift, within 1 hour, the person may die due to the internal bleeding. And this is very important to remember in any disaster. When we learn about disaster management, the utmost aim of the disaster management is to save the number of people, as many as possible, to save the lives. Saving life takes utmost priority. When it comes to saving life, please give the importance of identification, categorizing, and shifting them on priority basis while providing help to the injured person. Okay, then this we already discussed. Actually, when we take this training practically, like we have 2 days module or 3 days module of this training, you also can undergo at your district. We can approach the local Red Cross there for providing training, practical training on this. Definitely, practical training will gives you more confidence to come forward and help. If you are a first responder, means to say, if you are having an interest to respond to help someone in case of any such incidents or accidents or disasters, you need to have the set of skills which are thorough and which you are confident of. Okay, but definitely this session is meant to make you aware and sensitized, and that purpose can be served definitely through the online also. Okay, in case of internal bleeding while shifting, I was telling about semi-sitting posture or semi-sleeping posture, something like this.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes,
Sir, it's
yes, madam.
tea break, sir.
Okay, madam. Okay. We'll stop here for 10 minutes, madam. Tea break is
3:45, sir. Till 3:45.
3:45. Okay, madam. We'll continue at 3:45.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, madam. Thank you.